Okay, how you guys doing? How did we do on the assignment? I have not yet looked. I saw several people emailing me with issues. I think a few people got it working. And that's okay if you could not get it working. The point of the assignment was to have you guys submit something so I could take a look and see if we could figure out what was common. And what I think was common on a lot of them, by the way. Can you guys all hear me okay? Okay, what I think was common is that I left on the requirement to change passwords after you logged in. Now, when I tested this, and I tested it with a couple of student IDs, I tested this with a couple of y'all's IDs, and I was able to successfully log in from a Windows PC via VPN and change my password, and it kept the change. And it worked, but I think that's breaking down with some of y'all. So for those of you that are having that issue, what I'm going to do is I'll go into the domain controller and I'll take off that requirement to change the password from that generic VMJ US3R password, and then you will need to change it. I don't want you to keep using that generic password, but you'll need to change that from VMJ US3R to whatever you want to change it. However, the only way that you will be able to change it is log into a Windows computer in that domain, meaning you will have to log in via the Citrix Zen desktop and remotely view a computer. Remotely view one of the virtual machines, log in with that VMJ password, then change the password in that session. It's the only way I can think of to do that without me just doing it for you. Let me share a screen here. So keep in mind, if you can get the VPN working. First of all, is anybody here in Zoom today that got the VPN working? You were able to get a successful VPN connection. Anybody? Let me pull the chat window out. Hang on one sec. Okay, so Jacob got it working, Rachel got it working. So for those of you that got it working, and Sarah and Karen, did it ask you to change the password to something else, and did you change the password? The way I set it up is it should have asked you to change the password right there in the VPN connection, so that if you then changed it, that would be the password you would use the next time. And did you use your student ID? I noticed a couple of students said, we got it working when we used the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Don't use that. That's my test account that I set up. Use your student ID account. That should work. Okay, I want everybody to use that so that we can, so that you can have experience doing this for one. I'm going to see if anybody's actually logged in right now on the VPN. I am not, but I don't need to be, so. I just got to monitor here. Okay, so there is somebody there logged in successfully from 73.206.31.80. Is that anybody here, by the way? kept telling you password and username is wrong. Okay, so for those of you that didn't get it working, rather than email me, make sure you submit that as the assignment. Submit your screen prints and submit in the text of the assignment, hey, I couldn't get it working. It kept telling me this or that or whatever it kept telling me. And I'll take that in consideration. Then I'll go ahead and take that information, try to see if I can get it working for you. Try to see if I figure out what's broken on it. Why is it not working? Some of it might be something I need to change on the Windows side. Some of it might be stuff that you need to change on your side. But I need to know what you tried. So this is somebody logged in. Whoever that student ID is. Oh, I guess I shouldn't be showing that. But anyway, whoever that student ID is, they're logged in. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk to you today, and I'm going to assume this is, I'm going to assume that your VPN is working, but even if it's not, you should still be able to right now get to your Proxmox by using the NAT translation addresses. Now keep in mind, if you did get your VPN working, don't use that NAT translation address. In other words, if your VPN is connected, then you should be able to go to 192.168.10.200.11. 20.100. You should be able to go to the internal IP address with port 8006 if you're on the VPN. Do not try doing it with the external method, going to 192.138.194.45:9002345667, because that won't work if you are VPN'd in. I didn't make a loop back for that. This is only this method. Can you guys see my screen okay? This method is only, should only be used if you're not on the VPN. And you should be logging in as your own username and not as root. And if you cannot get your own username set up, let me know, and I'll try to help you with that. So was that Zach that did that, or did I do that? Zach, are you here? Let's see. Yeah, I see you here, Zach. Did you set that up? I guess I can see that you have a username, or did I do that manually for you or something? You did last night, okay. All right, so you are also awesome with a Z. That's cool. We're both awesome. Okay. You could have been awesome. You could have been a little different. You didn't have to imitate me exactly. So Zach, when you're logging in, make sure you're logging in as your username. So like, for example, I should have logged in as user Jake. I logged in as user root, but I should have logged in as user Jake. In fact, let me log out and log back in as user Jake, just so that I can have the same experience that some of you would be having. I don't remember my password. Let me log in as root. This is how we're going to change the password real quick. I'm going to get a console. Now remember, when you're doing this, is another thing to remember. When you're doing a shell, don't just right click over here, because you could right click over here and do a shell. Do a shell, but use the Xterm shell, because only that one allows you to copy and paste. You will be wanting to copy and paste things into this window here. So make sure you're using the Xterm JavaScript version. PASSWD Jake. So I updated my password. I log out and log back in. Okay, so now I'm me, and if I'm doing anything, I'm doing it as me and not as root user. So I want you to get into that good habit. Do not be, let me close that. Do not stay logged in as root. Make sure you're you. Now, you may not have access to everything. There may be some things you need to become root to do. So I'm going to show you, among other things, um, different ways to become the root user without logging in initially as root. So make sure when you're logging into your Proxmox server that you are student name @Pam, password authentication manager, Jake or Zach or Sreya or whoever you're logging in as, Raul, Robert, Sabrina, Farwa, who else is here? Kargan and Jacob and Sonali, and nobody is a weird name today. Good. Now let's see if I can. Now, not everything you're going to be able to make changes to, but let's see. I should be able to make changes to almost everything, like local content, for example. Let's just see. I'm going to try downloading another template of something else. Do I have a CentOS? Yeah, I already have. Well, no, I don't have CentOS 7 default. Yeah, it looks like I have ability to do that. And since all the users, as long as you use that ACO mod command, the PVEUM, PVE user manager, and you use the ACO mod and you modify your username to be part of the admin users, you should have access to everything. Like I just downloaded that container. There's Jake, but anybody should be able to see that container template and use it to create a new template, a new VM if you wanted to, example for create a container. Now, I forgot to do this. One thing I need to do that's very important. We need to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes. So for right now, if you're going to create a container or a VM, right now there's just 2 containers. We haven't created any VMs here. Make sure that you've put in your notes what IP address that you decided to use so we don't step on each other. Now, in this case, I think I just used DHCP. So just put that in there so that we know right there from the notes. Otherwise, people have to go, what did he use? Let me click on network here. See how he's set up. And I'll see DHCP. Just get in the good habit of adding notes on the summary page for each one of these. Oh, it didn't save it. And when we get to the point to where we're actually building servers, which we will be at very soon, I'd like to get there this week, where we're actually building a server and installing the LAMP stack on the server so that we can run web pages. We are going to want to use static addresses, not dynamic addresses, because one thing, as you probably know about DHCP, is when you reboot a template or reboot a container or a VM, if it's off for a certain period of time, if it's off for 24 hours, for example, and you turn it back on, it'll probably get a different IP address. We do not want our servers moving around. We want them to stay with the same IP address. So that's important to make sure that you're not choosing an IP address that somebody else did. So in the case of Team 2 here, where your IP is 192.168.2.200, you have the range of 201 all the way up to 253 up to 254 actually to use. So anybody could use that IP address on Team 2. If you're on Team 3, your IP address of your server is 192.168.20.100, right? You can use 101 through 199 because if you go into 200, that's Team 4. But it's possible that one of your teammates will use the same IP address. So as I said before, I'll make a spreadsheet, which I have not done. And if you want to if you guys for right now, if you decide I want to make a virtual machine or I want to make this template right here, click OK. let's say I did want to turn this Ubuntu into a server, 202. I'll add the note right here and I'll say IP address static. And I decided to make it 192.168.2020.202 because it's in my range. Make it match the, it's probably a good idea to make it match the container or the VM number. And then of course you actually would need to change it. In the case of a container, you can change it right here. So I'll change it from static to 192.168.20.202. Oh, and you have to do one other thing, by the way. You have to stick /24 on the end of that. I'm not going to explain net masking very closely, but just you need to type in /24 after that. That's your subnet mask. Gateway 192.168.20.1 in this case. This is the same info that we put in when we created Proxmox. For each team, 1 and 2, it's 10.1, 3 and 4 is 20.1, 4 team 5 and 6 is 30.1, team 7 and 8 is 40.1. In other words, the first IP address in your range, whatever range you're in, your gateway is always going to be .1. So those are the only two items that you need if you want to statically assign an IP address to a container or a VM. So now if I were to get a console to that machine, I may need to reboot it. Sometimes if you change IP address, you have to reboot things. Let's see, yeah, it's still saying it's 10.27, but there it's saying, oh, you want me to have a static address. I'm gonna reboot real quick. It should forget that DHCP address and only use that static address. I forgot the password to the container. Let's go ahead and deal with that because that's going to happen too. I kind of did that on purpose. If you forget the password to a container, that's actually not too difficult to overcome. Can't remember that container. Let's close that window. Now this is harder with a VM, so make sure if you do create a virtual machine from an ISO file, you use a password that you will remember. And that password is probably that MIS4397, but I'm just going to pretend I forgot it. Log into the Proxmox console. Get a shell window here. Now it's asking me to log in here. It did not ask that when you logged in as root, but it asks that when you ask for a shell when you're logged in as yourself, because it's giving you the ability to log in as root, but I still don't want you to do that. I want you to log in as Jake. Password, it's what I set it to. So here's the first thing I want to teach you is how to become root. Actually, before I teach you that, let's see if we can use this command to enter the container. The container number, in this case, is 201 or 202. I'm trying to get in 202, but I can't remember the password. Let's type in PCT, or excuse me, LXC. We used to use PCT, LXC. No, it is PCT, isn't it? Hang on 1 second. They changed it in 6.2. They changed it to something much longer. No, I think it should be PCT. I'm trying to show you the command to enter the container. It looks like I'm going to have to become root. That's what it is. Okay, so that's okay. I'm going to show you this in order.
You entered PXC instead of PCT. Maybe that's why it's not working.
No, because I've still got, I'm trying different, it's still saying command not found. And I know why, it's because it wants me to become root. So let me go ahead and show you what I wanted to show you. Right now it says I'm Jake at Proxmox2. If you need to temporarily become the root user for one command, you can use the sudo command. If you want, and I'll show you how we might need to do something to set up the sudo command. If you want to become the root user for the duration of this session, type in su space minus space root. It's going to ask you for the root password. Now I've become the root password, root at Proxmox2. Now I should be able to type in, there we go. Now the PCT command works. PCT enter, and let me pull back up the Proxmox screen. I want to go into container 202 because I can't remember the password. So I can type in PCT space enter 202, and it will literally put me into that container and it'll bypass the root login. Then I can use password. So su command. You want to get, and don't stay there once you've finished with whatever it is you need to do. Well, here, I'm going to get out of that. So I'm no longer, you need to make sure, pay very close attention to that. Before you type any commands, see what host you are on. Because you might be in a container, you might be in Proxmox, you might be executing that command in the wrong place. So I'm getting some messages, just need to make sure they were Mondays. It's been a busy day. There's a few commands that you can use in the command line to see who you are. If for whatever reason your prompt changes or you decide to change it, you can change that prompt and make it say whatever you want. You can always type in who am I? And you can always see what the machine is, because you can actually use the less command and less out this file. It's under the etc. folder called hosts. And it will tell you right here what the IP address is and the name of this host is. That's obviously not the Proxmox. So if I needed to execute something in the Proxmox command line, I realize, oh, I'm not there. Type in exit. Now I might be back in the Proxmox. Type in who am I? Oh, I'm root. If you type in W, by the way, it tells you all the people that are logged in, or who. And then I can also oh, not the password file, excuse me. Hosts, the host file. And it says here, this is Proxmox. It's in a different place in the file, but nevertheless, it still tells me where I'm at. So pay very close attention when you're using shell commands. They're the high-speed commands, but I got to be careful where you're at. Now, one thing I've not talked about is using SSH, which is the preferred method of getting a shell, using SSH. Actually forcing you to log into a console screen like this, even though it's a web GUI, that's not always desirable. It's not always secure. The better way to do it would be to use SSH. Now I'm going to connect into the EI lab temporarily real quick. I may lose you guys, hopefully not. Let's see what happens if I turn on the VPN while while I'm having a Zoom meeting. See if it breaks it. I think I have to, I'm trying to minimize this. Where is it? So if I lose you guys, I'll be right back. But I don't think I will, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so I'm in the EI lab. I can already tell, even though wasn't completed yet, I'm getting the correct IP address. So let's say you want to use a secure shell and not have to go through the Windows GUI. Can you guys all still see me, by the way? Are we still good with Zoom? Okay, good. It didn't kick me off, which good thing. I'm trying to find the, oh, there it is. I'm trying to find everybody's pictures. Okay, so now I should be able to, since I'm quote unquote in the lab, I can go directly to 192.168.10.200.8006, log in there. Well, let's say I was trying to log in from a device that did not have a web GUI, or I was trying to log into a server that didn't have a web GUI running. Alternatively, and this is only if it's set up, which it is in Proxmox, you can use a text-based program like PuTTY. So everybody needs to download, if you have not already, everybody needs to download PuTTY. Have you guys all downloaded PuTTY yet? Go download and install PuTTY. Once you've got PuTTY installed, and there's PuTTY for Mac too. Let me run it. We'll come up with this screen here. Host name or IP address. We don't have host names yet. So 192, if I want to go to Proxmox 2, 192.168. Now this isn't going to work. SSH isn't going to work unless I set up a NAT connection, which I will, but I haven't done it yet. I'll probably set it up to where 22002 goes to it, but let's not worry about that for a minute. Let's pretend your VPN's working. 192.168.10.200. Leave that port number at 22. That's the default port. For SSH, leave that connection type at SSH. I'm going to save it as, I'll call it Proxmox 2 in EI lab on VPN, something like that, just so that I can go to it again. I'm going to click open. Now you get a warning the first time it runs. You get that the very first time. This is just like when you go to a web page that says this web page might not be secure. It's all about secure certificates, self-signed certificates. Just click yes on that. Bring this window up. Looks like a shell, doesn't it? Log in as Jake. All right, so now I'm logged in with a shell window, but it's a remote shell window, and this is better. PuTTY is better, and SSH is better. So I don't even have to be logged in. I can log out of Proxmox now. I did not have to log into the GUIs. If all I need to do is log in and change some configuration file, for example, why bother starting the GUI up? Let me make that a little bit bigger. It's a little small on my screen. PuTTY is a very simple program, by the way. Everything's done by clicking the bar at the top here. Change settings. I'm going to, and that's the whole menu there for PuTTY right there. I want to change my Windows appearance. I want to change the font to something bigger so I can read it. Just a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm using secure shell here. Now this is not the same thing as the console screen. The console screen is literally as if I'm sitting in front of the computer screen that's connected physically to the console. This is a remote shell, a remote window into the system. It's separate from the console. So you will not see certain things on this screen that you might see on the console. So keep that in mind. Like you won't see drive errors and things like that, or messages that are sent to the console from another console, for example. And I mentioned SU. So if I needed to edit a file, like for example, I know there's a file that we need to edit, which is one of the second things I needed to talk about, which is repositories, not suppositories, but repositories. And let's go Google for, first of all, what is a repository? What is let me type in Linux repository. A Linux repository is a storage location from which your system receives and installs OS updates and applications. Each repository is a collection of software hosted on or actually many remote servers somewhere. In the case of Microsoft and Windows, as in the case of Mac, they use repositories, but those are hard-coded, or they're coded, then you can't change them. They're coded somewhere into hidden files. But with Linux, since it's a distributed operating system, it's distributed OS, you can set where you're supposed to get your updates from. Furthermore, if you install a rather complex package like Proxmox, Proxmox can auto-update by using or adding to the list of potential places to go look for files, adding the location of a Proxmox repository, which is what we're going to do. Now, I'll do this for everybody on their server. I'm just showing you this so you understand the concept of repositories and why you need to use them. So if we go Google for Proxmox repository, Proxmox repository. I want you to go read through this on your own so you understand what the Proxmox repositories are. We are not paying for a subscription, so we don't have access to the enterprise repository or the commercial repository, but they do have, since it's a requirement, they do have a freeware or a free repository, which is supposedly slightly older code. It's tested code, but it's a little bit older. The commercial or the enterprise repository is supposed to have the latest and greatest. When you install Proxmox, they want you to buy a subscription, and they assume you're going to buy a subscription. So they're pointing to the enterprise repositories, which is a problem for us. If we try to upgrade, and by the way, you can do this from the GUI or you can do this from the command line. There are different package installers that different distributions use. The package installer that Debian and Ubuntu choose to use is called the apt package installer. This is how we install things from repositories. The apt package installer. CentOS and Fedora use the yum package installer. There's not a lot of package installers, and what a package installer does is it's kind of like, I guess the best analogy would be like the Google Play Store or the Apple iTunes Store. Rather than actually going to a website of a company or an application developer and downloading their installable code, you can go to the Google Play Store or the Apple iTunes Store and download what supposedly is a well-tested and well-vetted version of that program, which is guaranteed by Google or by Apple to be the actual code. When you're going and downloading code, it can sometimes be very dangerous. If you're not paying attention to where you're going to get the code from, you may be getting what looks like Microsoft Office or what looks like some cool program you want to install, and you're actually going to some hacker website. You know, you're not going to Microsoft.com, you're going to Microsoft co.za -123, and you'll download something that claims to be Office, and it's not really, it's spyware. The use of repositories, the use of the Google Play Store and the Apple iTunes Store helps to ensure that you're not downloading bad or rogue code. So, and also another thing that repositories do is if you wanted to install a package or a program that relied on other programs to already be installed, it will install those for you as well if they're not already installed. Like if you went to a certain website, you installed something and it says, oh, we need to download, we also need to install, you got to install the Net Framework 4.5 or something like that. And it might require you to go do that first. Repositories handle all of that dependency for you. It's called dependencies. So the way you use a repository, and I haven't changed anything with respect to proxies, like this is just in general, is in the case of apt, you would type in apt, install, and then the name of the package you want to install. Now you already have to know the name of some package. You can go Google for these names, or you can guess. Like for example, there's an editor that I like to use called Nano. It may already be installed, so let's try it. Apt install Nano. And it gave me an error. Why did it give me that error? Why would you guess? What did I do wrong? Because I did do something wrong. Who am I right now? Who am I? I'm Jake, I'm not root, so I need to become root. So right, I need to either use su minus root, or there's another thing that you can do. I'm gonna go ahead and become root for a minute. So I'm gonna back up for 1 second. I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you today, I know I am. You can use the sudo command. Sudo, or sudo. Sudo will let you do a command as the root user one time without having to log in as root. Let's try it first. Okay, so I'm Jake right now. Sudo apt install Nano. Oh, I'm sorry. Typo. That O and P are so close to each other. The sudo command is not found. That's interesting. It's not installed in Proxmox. Oh, darn it. I didn't mean to log out. Excuse me. Pull Putty back up. Pardon me. Because I saved that before, I can go back to it and find it. Log in quicker. It doesn't let you save the usernames and passwords, which you don't want to do that. Let's see if we can install sudo. Okay, it's allowing us to install sudo. So that's interesting that sudo doesn't come in with Proxmox. Okay, so supposedly it's installed Proxmox. I typed in sudo. So now let me turn back into Jake. If I wanted to execute one command as the root user, I would type in sudo and then the command apt install Nano. And it'll give you this little warning the first time. We hope that you know what you're doing. Enter the password for Jake, not root. It's just asking to re-enter your own password. It'll give me that error the first time you're not in what's called the sudoers file, because I haven't given permission. Hang on one sec. Woo, that was a good one. What? No God bless yous? No gesundheit? Okay, fine. See if you get an A in this class. I'm just kidding. So I want you guys to make use of sudo, and I want you guys to use sudo. It makes less sense to use it for Proxmox, but when you create your VMs and your containers, I want you to also log into your VMs and containers as a user that you set up, not as root. And in most of these templates and most of these VMs that you download and install, sudo will already be logged in. As a matter of fact, when you go Google for how to do certain things, like let's see, how to install LAMP in CentOS 7, 99% of the cases, let's just go look at this little how to do it. I will guarantee you that they're making use of sudo. Sudo yum install HTTP, sudo do this, sudo do this. Every command that you see on a help page somewhere starts with the word sudo, and that's because they're assuming and they're encouraging you not to be logged in as the root user, which is what I'm not right now. You have to use the sudo command to execute something as root. So let's temporarily become root, and I'll go ahead and set up the sudoers file. Su minus root. Su and sudo are not the same thing. Okay, so now I'm root. It mentioned a file called sudoers. Almost all config files in Linux are under the etc. directory. See if there's anything called su something. I see a file there called sudoers, or I can do ls minus la. I can grep for anything that has su in it. So there's a file there called sudoers. Any group of me of this class. What? I don't know what you're saying, Ali. I believe the nano editor is already installed. Let's just list out. There's several different ways we can list out a file. The easiest one is to use cat. Let's just see what's in that file. Okay, I'm looking at stuff in that file, and you see mostly comments. See the man page for details on how to write a sudoers file. Sudoers. I typed in man, the man page. I didn't know how to use sudoers, or maybe I do know how to use it, but I'm doing this on purpose. If you don't know how to execute a certain command, try man space the name of the command first. Sudoers policy plugin determines the user's sudo privileges, what they're allowed to do. This little manual page that I'm looking at, you can use the up and down arrows to scroll up and down through it. And that tells me all of what I need to do in this sudoers file. Now, usually man pages are very technical and used mostly as reference. Usually what I do is I go Google for how to add user to sudoers. It's easier to do it this way. Okay, so I've already created a new user. You may get an error message. You have insufficient privileges. You can replace user. So let's see if I can create a sudoer here. I didn't like that instruction. Oh, I see. So they're all doing it with groups. I'm gonna copy and paste that to make it easy. Now in SSH, by the way, you do copy and paste with the right mouse button. I'm gonna right click. Now this is Debian, not Ubuntu, so maybe I should type in Debian just to make sure that that will work. There's different ways to do it on different distributions. It says you can edit the sudo files or create a new configuration file. I like to just edit the sudoers file. I'm going to use nano. First of all, let's see if that did it. I don't think that user model will do it because I don't think there is a group called sudo. But let's try it because that'll be even easier. Not in the sudoers file. Didn't think so. No, Nano, I'm lucky Nano was already installed there. The only other editor that's usually available in like the most basic of Linuxes is VI, which is a terrible editor. So if you ever have to use or it ever refers to the VI editor, keep in mind it is not normally, it's not a full screen editor. So you need to go read up on how to use VI because it's not that intuitive, whereas Nano is much more to it. So I think I can just put in this. I'm going to guess here. Because I haven't done this in a while. So I highlighted in SSH and PuTTY, I highlighted that. I didn't press Control or anything, and then I can right click and it copies and pastes automatically. Let's see if that does it. Okay, so that did it. So that's probably the better way to do it. Just edit after you get sudo installed. But like I said, it should be installed on most of the templates and most of the VMs that you're going to download and install. Find the root line, copy and paste it essentially, and add a new line and put your name there. So if I wanted to give it somebody else, like who else is on my team here? Zach on Proxmox 2. Z full C. So I could go ahead and do it for Z full C too. Now I don't know if I should let you guys do this on your own. Could be a little bit dangerous, but you can try. If you mess the, I don't think you can mess the server up too badly by trying this. So now Z Fulci, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your right name right or not, Zach, but you should be able to now execute with the sudo command. So I used to discourage people from using the sudo command, but I think it's probably, because I'm an old school kind of guy, but it's probably a better idea, especially since, like I said, 99% of the stuff that you read on how to do something, they're asking you to use the sudo command. So like I said, if I wanted to install something, I use apt. I'm going to install something else that probably is not on here, something called MC, Mouseless Commander. Now, the reason I'm probably getting that error is it may be trying to already install another package in the background. If you're unable to do something via sudo, then you can use the su-root, but only use that as a last result. MC. Now, most of the time when you install a package, it will ask you the question, are you sure you want to install this package? Notice that there's an uppercase Y and a lowercase n. The uppercase Y means that's the default. So you can usually just hit enter. Or another thing you could have done, and you'll notice that a lot of times when you're Googling for how to install something, looking for just an example here. Now, if they're just using install, if you use the -y, I'm gonna remove it. Well, no, I'm just gonna do it again. If you do apt -y install the package name, whatever it happens to be, then it won't ask you, are you sure you want to install this? It will just assume that yes, you want to install that. Now this is going to error out and tell me there's nothing to do because you've already installed it. Now, if there was an update to the package, instead of install, you would use update. Excuse me, you would just say update without the name of the package. If you do that, it will update all of the packages that are already installed. Okay, so if you've installed 7 or 8 or 10 packages, all you have to do is type in apt -y update, and it'll go through there and update all of them. Now, it's giving me some errors here, and this is the main thing I wanted to tell you this class, is that we need to fix the repositories, because it's pointing to, you'll notice here, you got to read really closely when you're executing things on a command line. Read really closely what the output is, just because we apparently, we don't see an error at the bottom of the screen here, but if we look up above where we are on previous lines, we'll see some things that are definitely errors. Unauthorized IP, failed to fetch the repositories. That's because this IP address is not, or this server has not been registered to Proxmox. I don't have a valid subscription. So I need to edit where the repositories are, or which repositories to look at. Package repositories for, this is specific to Proxmox. So I'm not using the enterprise repository, but I'm going to look at a little note here. It says, look, you can disable this repository by commenting out the above line using a pound or a hashtag at the start of the line. So there's the file that it's referring to. It says you need to edit that file. You need to fix that file. So let's go fix that file. I'm going to copy that. come over here and I'm going to type in nano. Again, you only need to do this in Proxmox, and I'll do this on all the servers. You guys don't need to fix your repositories. I'll do it for you. Nano /, etc. /app / sources.list.d enterprise list. That's the only line in there. It's basically an additional on top of the other Ubuntu or Debian repositories. It's saying, here's another one that you should go grab updates from. I don't have a valid subscription, so I'm going to comment it out so it doesn't bother doing anything. In 99% of the cases with Linux configuration files, the # is a comment delimiter. Not always, but it's usually the #. Sometimes it's the period. Sometimes it's a semicolon. This thing underneath here, PVE no subscription repository. We do want the latest and greatest updates, but we need to change this file right here. Let's go see what's in that. And actually, let's go to etc. apps first and see what's in there. Okay, so we've got some different configuration files, some different sources files in here. That's the file it wants us to reference. So we just less that out. The less command, by the way, lists a file one line at a time, and you can scroll up and down 24 lines at a time. The cat command just spits it out over the screen. Nano, I'm going to edit it. If you're not sure what you're doing, by the way, when you're editing files, make a copy of it. That's some good practice. Maybe I should do that. Save or original or something like that. You guys see what I did there? I just made a copy of that file, just in case I accidentally obliterate it or do something I didn't want to do. Okay, what does it say I need to change here? It says ftpdebian.org must remain control. So that first line is okay. That second line is basically, I'm going to take it, it's the same there. Security update's the same. Oh, okay. So the only thing I need to add is this block right there. It's the only thing that's different. So I'm going to copy that, come over here, and since I'm in PuTTY, not the secure shell window, but PuTTY, I can do that. So this is going to add, again, the # are just, everything that starts with a pound or hashtag is just a comment. Debian package, there's the URL to get the package from. That buster refers to the version of Debian. And it says, make sure when you're doing upgrades to look in this listing, PVE no subscription for any upgrades. I'm going to save that file. Then I'm going to use apt update. This is updating the list of packages that I'm supposed to upgrade. And it says, hey, I've noticed, I updated the list. You've got 40 packages that you need to upgrade. Here's how you upgrade. Apt dist upgrade. Upgrade the distributions. Now this is going to take a little while. I don't think I need to do the -y, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just so I don't have to answer any questions. And this is going to do a full upgrade of my Proxmox to get it to the latest and greatest version. So like I said, for everybody, I will do this for everybody because I don't want you guys to mess up your upgrade of your underlying OS. But I showed it to you because you do need to perform these upgrades periodically within your containers and within your VMs, depending on what they are. So it's 6.2.4. When this is done, that'll probably change. That'll probably change like 6.2.51 or something like that. I'm not sure. Let's see. 544, maybe that, I don't know. It will definitely change to a higher number. We could have actually done it from here. Here's all the pack. When I did the apt-get update, it populated this list with all these different packages that are available for upgrade. Just like, and so again, this is just like when you go to Windows Update. You click on Windows Update, it says there are 19 new updates for Windows, except the difference is not only am I updating Windows, or not only am I updating my OS, I'm also updating all of the installed programs at one time that were installed with apt. Only stuff that was installed with apt. If stuff was installed outside of apt, there's no way for apt or the package installer to know about it. That's why it's always good to always try to use apt to install something. You'll notice some of the things that I'm going to have you guys install this semester are going to have you use apt. Some of them you're going to have actually be using wget, or you're actually uploading a file and actually running an installation file. That will not automatically update with the apt updater or the yum updater if you're using CentOS. So you have to follow whatever procedures are required for that individual package. Okay, let's see, what else do I want to show you? So over the next day or two here, and I'm going to go ahead and start looking, right after this class, I'm going to start looking at the assignments. I prefer that if you emailed me and said you were having problems, like I said, go ahead and submit that as the assignment so that I can just go down the list and grade the assignments, and anybody that's having a problem, I'll try to solve that problem for you so that you can VPN into the server. But even if you can't, into the lab, even if you can't VPN, as long as you're using the NAT translation port number, which is specific to your team. If you're team 8, it's port number 9008. As long as you're using that, you should be able to get to Proxmox. You should be able to download PuTTY. What you won't be able to do yet, and I can fix this fairly quickly here. Let me go ahead and do this. I always run the risk of shooting myself in the foot when I do this because I'm like, oh, I don't remember how to do it, but I should be able to do this pretty easily. If you remember, SSH uses port 22, okay? If I want to point to 8 different servers internally, I can't just use port 22. I need to use 8 alternate port numbers for PuTTY so that you guys can directly SSH into your Proxmox server. Once you SSH into the Proxmox server, then you can further SSH to anything else inside the lab, including any of your VMs, for example. So we don't really need to set up NAT translations for any of your other VMs or containers. But let's say for if I wanted to get into 202, for example, it may or may not have PuTTY available on it. But let's see if I can just do it from right here. So what's the IP address for this machine? It should be 20.202. Let's see if I can ping it. Okay, I can't ping it. Let me see if I can get into this one. Excuse me. Let me just temporarily enter it so I know it's 201. So I'm in that container right now. Oh, I'm sorry, it should have been 10.201. That was my mistake. 10.202. No, still can't ping that one. Oh, and that's why it's not working. I actually gave it the wrong static IP address. Somebody should have caught me on that. I'm on team 2 here, which is in cabinet 1, which is supposed to start with a 10. I made a mistake. And reboot it. It kicked me off of it. There, it's already, containers boot up really fast, by the way, like literally 3 or 4 seconds. Let's see if I can SSH to that container. I don't know if it's even set up for SSH. SSH. This is kind of like using PuTTY, but from a command line. Yes, I'll connect. Password. I don't know if that's the right password for that or not. Or I may not be able to log PuTTY in it to SSH in as root. I'm going to go back into that machine for a minute. I'm editing the configuration file for SSHD. I know this is getting a little advanced, but I'll go back over this later. I'm just doing this in the interest of time right now. To show you guys how to do this. One of these options does not allow me to log in as root. I'm sure that's what it's doing. Port 22. I just got to find it real quick. There it is. Permit root login. I'm going to uncomment that because it was commented out. And I'm going to type in, yes, permit root login. Normally you don't ever want to do that, but I'm going to do it. Otherwise, you'd have to log in as a user. Do I have a user on here? I think I created a user called Jake, didn't I could do that. I could just create a user called Jake on this. Let's do that instead. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but if you follow the video, you can pause and rewind. So I just created a user called Jake on that container. Now I'm going to log out of that container. Now I'm going to try to SSH into that container as that user, Jake at the IP address. That works. So now I'm the user Jake on that other system. So my point is that we only need to be able to SSH in it, assuming you can't get your VPN working. We need to be able to SSH in from the outside world. So I'm going to log into the Sonic wall and I'm going to set up a NAT forward, a NAT port forward, just like I did for the Proxmoxes. So let's see if I can do that real quick while I got you on the computer and you'll learn something. Here's my, I got NAT policies up already here. So here's all the different Proxmox policies I set up. right here for Proxmox 2, for example. This is basically saying anybody that's trying to talk to this machine on port 9002, forward them to this internal IP address and change the port number to 8006. So I'm going to go ahead and add same kind of rule basically. I'm going to add we'll call it Proxmox 2 SSH. Original source, I'll allow it. It's kind of dangerous, but I'll allow from anywhere in the world. Translated source. Original destination was the WAN IP of this gateway, which is called X1 IP in this case. Translated destination. Now I need to put in the IP address of the Proxmox, which I've already saved. Proxmox 2. Original service, translated service, I already know is going to be SSH because that's default port 22, but I need to make a new service here and I'm going to call it SSH on 22002. Okay, use some high up port number. Protocol SSH uses TCP. Port range is 22002, excuse me, 002 all the way to 22002, excuse me, I'm making typos here. And is it supposed to be any on the interfaces? I may need to change that. Oh, from X1 to any. Okay. We edit it real quick and then we'll almost be there. And then I'll do this for all of the other servers. So again, even if you don't get VPN working, which I still want everybody to try to get working. It should work. Okay, so now I'm going to kill my VPN connection. How do I disconnect from the VPN? Well, let me disconnect. How annoying. I will manually disconnect myself from here. Currently active VPN. That must be me. Yeah, that looks like me. So I should be able to kill myself somewhere here. I gotta remember this screen where I can disconnect people. There it is. So I think I killed my connection. Well, regardless of whether I killed it or not, this should still work. So since I've set up that VPN, excuse me, since I've set up that NAT forward, I should be able to run PuTTY now. Oh yeah, I guess it worked because it kicked PuTTY off here. New session. I'm going to use the external IP address 192.138.194.45. Change that to 22002. For team 3, it's going to be 22003. For team 4, 22004. I'll send out an announcement after I set these up. I'll try to do it right after class. Save session, I'll do Proxmox to via NAT, Network Address Translation. Save that, open, and that looks like that's going to work. I'm getting that error screen. Just logged in as root since I was in a hurry. Okay, so that's working. So I think as long as, even if your VPN's not working right now, if you guys give me a little bit of time here this evening, I will go through the assignments, go through the emails, but again, I'm going to go through all the assignments first. If your VPN's working, that's great. You can log in now to your Proxmox, and you can log into your, you can try PuTTY. So make sure you can PuTTY to the Proxmox. But then I want you to create, if you haven't done this already, create your first container and start playing with it. So for those of you that have VPN, that's what you can work on now. For those of you whose VPN is not yet working, you can still create your first container and your first VM because you have external access right now. That's not going to work well. You can use the 192.138 method. In the meantime, I will fix it so you can VPN in because that's ultimately the better, safer way to do it. Okay, so are you guys clear on what I want you to be working on right now? I want you to do what I've basically just done here. The only thing I haven't done, and I can go ahead and show you this, I'll get one started for you. I created a container, which was really easy to do. 2.168, I got to do it the external method because I killed my VPN connection on purpose on port 9002. I've created a couple containers, so every student needs to create at least one container. Play with it, get it running, play with it. To create a VM, you first have to have an ISO, so go look on local to see if anybody's already downloaded ISO. So click on local, click on content. I happen to have an ISO right there I've already downloaded. If there isn't one, I've already showed you guys how to find an ISO and then upload one. Find it, download it to your local computer, then click upload. Find it on your computer and upload it. But assuming that you have an ISO, I'm going to click create, excuse me, not create container, excuse me, create VM. Create VM. I'm going to number mine 203. I'm assuming nobody else is yet doing anything on this server. Name, I'm going to call this CentOS 7 VM Jake. Next. ISO image, there's an ISO image right there. So if you get to this point, you don't have any ISO images, you can't make one. You gotta have at least one. Type is Linux. I already happen to know that. Click next. If you want to, by the way, if you guys want to download the Microsoft Windows 10 ISO and upload that, you can do that. Just go Google for how to create a media creation tool, Windows 10. You can upload 10 if you want. I'm going to take the defaults for that. 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 I'm going to take the defaults for that. That was easy, wasn't it? Confirm. Now I'm going to go start it. Once it changes its thing, there we go. And before I start it, I'm going to get a console to it. Then I will start it so that I can see its beginning boot up screen. It's going to sit there for 60 seconds. In most cases, maybe Ubuntu doesn't sit there for 60. Maybe it sits there for 10. I'm going to speed it up. Now, this is a CentOS minimal installation, so I don't think it's a GUI version. But if you download Ubuntu or anything else that's not minimal, it probably is a GUI installation, and you'll see a mouse appear and some graphical stuff coming up. I pressed escape there. It doesn't need to check the hard drive or the memory. It's already been done by Proxmox. Now you'll notice this is a much more involved procedure to create a VM. I don't think I've created a VM yet, right? So do you think everybody can get one container and one VM created by tomorrow, or is that asking too much? Try it. Okay, don't worry about the VPN right now because you can access your Proxmox via the GUI and the SSH externally now. You don't even need the SSH to do this. Oh, this actually is a GUI installation. Good. There's two mice. The black mouse is the internal mouse, I should say. Installation source, I should already have that. Date and time. I think I've gone through this before, haven't I, with you guys? Is anybody still there? I'm not seeing anything in chat. Oh, I have to choose that. No disk, I selected that. There we go. Begin install. Okay, so that's your marching orders. Everybody create at least one container. On each team, everybody create at least one VM, even without your Proxmox being updated or upgraded. Oh, there it is, a 6.2.6, by the way. So we're up to the latest and greatest. So by tomorrow, I should be able to log into everybody's Proxmox. (9003). Let's see if Team 3 is doing their job. And I should see containers and VMs on there and I'd like to know who they belong to, by the way, because I can't tell. Okay, there you go. All right, Robert Goldman, thank you. I was gonna chastise you for not making notes, but you're making notes. There is no note on this container 303. So whoever created that, you need to add notes. VM 301. Good, good. And that's actually, although that's insecure, that's probably a great idea, Robert. And that's a great idea for everybody just for the learning purposes here. If you create a username or create a container or a VM and you want to use some alternate password, put it in the notes. So you're not doing what I'm doing and trying to remember, what did I make that password? Or use the same generic password throughout. If you're going to create containers and VMs, whatever you set your user password to for Proxmox, if you made it MIS 4397, if you made it that, make it that for everything, and then it'll be the same password on everything. We're not going to hack each other. So 304, who's that? Okay, so I'm probably getting that error because I'm logged into 2 Proxmoxes at once. So make sure you're notating everything. That way I can give everybody agreed. There's 2 to 3 people per team. Some of you only have 2 people on your team. Some of you have 3. One server might have 4, but I think all the servers just have 3 people on them. Okay, any questions? No questions? Anybody still there? What's your question, Dolly? Your group. What group are you in? Did you not log into? So that's a good question. What is your group? If you log into Blackboard, it should tell you. I'm gonna run this off the screen for a minute because I'm gonna check. I'm gonna log into Blackboard. Slide this over here out of my way. I assumed everybody could see what their group number was. Go check Blackboard, see if you can see it. It should be in there. Blackboard singing in the dead of night. Okay, I'm just double checking to make sure that I put that in there. How do you find out who else is in your group? That's a good question. And it used to be, like I said before, Zachary's, that somebody's at my front door. I guess I'll have to be at my front door later. I'll have to tell you, because you can't tell, or I'll have to share a spreadsheet and then you guys will know. Or you'll see people pop up. You know what you could do? This is one thing you could do. This is because this is all about communication. How do we communicate with each other? So here's Proxmox. You can actually put in notes for the Proxmox, I believe. Let me double check that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can. Oh, I thought you could. Well, if you want to know who else is on your team, and really, you guys aren't really working as a team as we used to. The way you'll know who's on your team is the other VMs and other containers that are popping up. How about that for right now, okay? I'll share a better version of that by sharing a spreadsheet. Right now, here's Proxmox 2. When I share that Google spreadsheet, it'll have people's Gmail addresses on there. And then you guys can optionally communicate with each other. Oh, there. I knew there was a notes file somewhere. So Proxmox2 notes, edit. So add yourself there to the Proxmox notes. Okay, any other questions? Minimize all this stuff so I can see if there's any other questions. Do you ever shut down the containers or VMs? Nah, leave them going. You can do that if you want, but if you shut them down and I want to check them out and see how they're doing, they're not running. So I would just leave them running. If you have a couple of false starts, don't leave old ones hanging around. Okay, get rid of old ones or turn old ones off and put in the notes. This was a failure, but I want to keep it around. I had a problem with this one, so turn it off, but put a note as to why you turned it off. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end now if there's not any other questions. So leave it up to me to get you guys communicating with each other, but you can help by putting a note in on each Proxmox server with just your name and your Gmail address, and then you guys can optionally communicate with each other. All right, I will see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll start at 4 o'clock tomorrow. I had to start a little bit later today because my other class ate into this time. Tomorrow at 4.